recording.
We've
Yeah.
got it. We've got it. Right then. Back to the wiles of Zoom. Let's see what goes on here. And just been watching a 3 hour film, which I had no idea was 3 hours
I
long.
know, it's so long. I
There's
literally
a
thought this when you were like, oh, I've just got that one thing to watch. And I was like, yeah.
oh, it's a mini series. But no, it was amazing. But anyway, Rachel, welcome to Cinema Life and Everything. We'll be all professional now.
Hello,
How
hello,
you
darling.
doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. I'm like a little nervous actually. Like,
No.
I think like because as I kind of spoke about, I don't watch films. Really, like, I don't. I do. But like,
You picked
I
three amazing ones.
yeah, one of the one that I picked though that you had to watch
Mm.
that is voted one of the worst or one of the best, which I feel like it's like I can see that. I appreciate that. That's fine. I've
Now,
accepted.
as one of my top three films myself, being The Fountain, which is also voted as one of the worst and one of the best, we'll get onto it. But I was absolutely blown away because when I first started watching it, I was like, oh, I remember that this film was voted bad, and then
Yeah,
I got like literally less than 5 minutes into it, and I was like, oh well, this is amazing
I'm
and
in. I'm in.
completely like I should have watched this in the cinema.
Because it's
But
so wacky. Like, yeah.
it's it's random. It's really random. But Rachel, before we go any further, would you just like to tell the viewers and the listeners a little bit about yourself? This is
So,
hard, yeah.
oh god.
And your
So
life, go.
I'm a dancer, actress, and Pilates instructor.
Ooh,
Um, I initially went to university to do human physiology and then was like, got to the end and basically was like, I'm gonna live my life and went off to drama school. And after, yeah, straight after uni, and all my professors were like, what are you doing? And so then chose to go the more like artistic route and did all my training down in London and then just stayed, which is where I am now. And then yeah, just been working. Obviously, we've done some jobs together, and then here we are. Yeah,
very cold. Lots involving water bottles and being near fires
so
in between takes.
losing the literal.
I was that is super interesting. Before I go any further, the link between like human physiology and the anatomy and the way the body moves, but also with the way the body moves, the way it expresses emotion, which there is a real through line into sort of drama and acting and dance. So was that
And
something? Was that a curiosity you followed, or was that just like you just I want to do this now?
I think yes, it was like it. Well, it's actually because me down on my luck. But
Mm.
I auditioned when I was like 16, 17 and didn't and got into a few places but didn't get the funding. And so
Right.
in Scotland it's free to go to university. And so I basically was like, do I like have a year out and then try drama schools again? And I think my parents were just like really wanted me to utilize that free education. And so
Mm.
like I was already like I was such a like nerd, loved like I just loved like chemistry, biology at school. Um but I also loved, yeah, like movement and like drama and dance and all those things. I think I was always quite torn. And so
Mm.
like the decision was kind of made for me. But I think I was definitely drawn to like human physiology because I always had that kind of drive to do dance or movement performance, and so it was a kind of a way of merging the two type thing. So I guess it was quite conscious, and also I was
Yeah.
maybe further down the line I could do like physio, so it's still like involving the body, and like I think that's what drew me to reformer Pilates. So like I've recently started teaching that, and it's just like the fusion of the two. So it's like
Mm.
yeah, it's wild. It's just really interesting. So there is
That
a
ma-
through
that machine is a torture implement. I've used a few in my time, and I'm just
there.
like, "Oh, can you feel your core?" And I'm like,
Oh yeah,
"Yeah,
my partner literally calls it like the rack, like
yeah." It
the
really looks like one.
I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's not far off it to be fair, but like, I mean, I think that's what I love though, because I get so distracted. So I'm like, ooh, like springs and like all this stuff is going on.
Yeah,
So it's like a play toy, you know, like the things the babies lie and they get like it's like that for
It is
adults.
like, yeah, Paul. I remember I made my colleague who was showing it all to me crease up because she went, just pull on these now. I'm like, why would I want to? It's only gonna hurt.
But it's
No
so
good will
true.
come of me pulling on them.
You're like, why are you forcing me to do this?
But no, really, really interesting. Sort of like I say, of not really taking a step back, but sort of like seeing a big overview of your life and how you could sort of follow another path, but then it sort of plays back into your creativity and your interests as well. Super,
Yeah,
super cool.
yeah. Actually, maybe I haven't noticed that before. Fair
Ah.
enough.
Right then, so let's get talking about your free film choices. Name them all now, and then we can take an order. You can pick
I
the order
feel
you
like part of
want.
me wants to be like, I changed my mind. I have
Everybody does. Don't worry. You can always come back in another time.
but so the first one was 1917, which I initially wrote as 1918, which isn't a film. But and
You panicked
I
me. I
love
was
that
like,
you humored me. You were like, yeah, okay.
I
Like
thought maybe it was a sequel or something.
who knows? God, I can handle a sequel. But
No.
also literally I didn't know that I was so into like war films. So I was
Mm.
also like basically I was toying between that and All Quiet on the Western Front because like
Oof.
oh gosh, yeah,
Yeah.
very dramatic. Maybe that, yeah. So those 1917 I went with just because it's so like interestingly shot.
Yes.
And then the other one, Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. Again, classic. I like a lot of rom-com. I love Jim Carrey. I think he's a very interesting human. Um,
Yes.
yeah, wild. Uh,
Really, yeah.
I
Lived a
mean,
few lives.
yeah, yeah. We could go back to
We'll
that.
come back to Jim Carrey, yeah.
And then, as we spoke about, Cloud Atlas. So
Yes.
very varied. And then I wrote down, because I'm so indecisive as well. I wrote down like a big other list of like kind of things were on the horizon. So like Her,
Oh,
Looper,
oof.
Eye in the Sky, Baby Driver,
Oh,
Little Women, The Courier, Queen and Slim, like all these things, and I'm like, oh,
oh,
because
there's some good ones there. You have to come back
yeah,
on. We'll have to talk for a few of them as well. I know it's an impossible choice for everyone, but it's just like if we otherwise, what happens? Everyone's with 10 films and we cover each film for like 2 minutes, and it's
yeah,
like so
like,
three seems to be a sweet spot.
yeah, yeah. But I found it hard to decide. So I was very
Yeah.
much like, maybe this isn't my ultimate list, but it was at that moment because I think like it's so dependent on like the mood that you're in,
Yes.
like I meant to watch 1917 for like 3 months and I was like emotionally I can't do it, like it took me a
Yeah.
while to like commit, but and I actually watched it in, people are going to hate me so much, but I actually watched it in two parts because I just can't concentrate for that long.
And it well, let's start with 1917. One thing before we get into 1917 that I really was fascinated about your film choices there. You've got something like Cloud Atlas, which is like a massive sprawling epic and jumps between time and location,
It's
just every
crazy.
other it's a mad film. And then you got something in 1917 that puts you with that one guy and you do not leave him. It's
Yeah,
microscopic in its way. So you chose a film that was massive expanse and then one that was completely just sort of microscopic, and that
isolated.
really
I think
interested me as well.
I think that's just actually shows how like varied,
Yeah.
like I will literally watch anything if it's like interesting or if you're in the mood for it. So I'm not
Yes.
like tied. Like I was just speaking to my friend and she was like, "Oh, I didn't think you would be into war films," and I was like, "I just think I'm interested in anything that's like a good story that like draws you in." So like yeah, my partner always like laughs because I set such crazy unrealistic goals for like film choices. They'll be like, "Oh, what do you want to watch?" And I'll be like, "Okay, so I want like sci-fi set in the future that's got like I don't even know, like wacky romance, but also a comedy, but it's serious and it's war." And she's like, "Where's Cloud
So
Atlas?"
Cloud Atlas then.
That box, and that's why we got there because it was like so funny. Like he was like, "Oh my gosh, I've finally like given you
They
that
made the
ultimate."
film for you. Well, I was going to say, even that list that you wrote out there, you say you don't watch a lot of films. I think you do watch films. You're just
Yeah, maybe
very,
I did.
you're very in like what you want. You know, you just can't watch anything. You want a certain idea of
I
what
am
you.
so picky, and I think because I love this is when you ask me about films, like I love books, and so like I
Mm,
will like read, I will like just devour books and books, and so when they're made into films, I always
mm.
just prefer the book because
Yes.
I just I don't know. So yeah, like I think there was a lot more films on there that I love, but I love the book more. So then I was like, oh, I'm
Mm.
just gonna stay away from the book-esque ones.
So yeah, 1917 then, even though you say it's a war film, and yeah, okay, war is the background, and there are a lot of
Mm,
like commentary on the horrors of war. I really did feel that the drive of the main character to get the message, about the brother and stuff as well was
yeah.
just it played more. It wasn't glamorizing war for me. When someone says a war film, I always think very much it's high octane action scenes and
Mm,
a pumping soundtrack, and this was just very, very human, very emotional,
yeah.
very, very intense.
Yeah, I think that's what I love because like, and maybe this is, and I know that we're not talking about other films, but like the same
Mm.
thing with like All Quiet on the Western Front. It was like
Yes.
you really just got pulled into their story, and I think like what always attracts me to certain types of war films is like the fact that it's such like real humans, and like I would
Mm.
talk to my nana or my granddad, and like they had gone through that experience, and so like I think that's specifically with 1917, you can imagine just like these two wee boys. I mean, they're not wee boys, but like they
Yeah,
have
they're
no
young.
bloody
Yeah.
clue. They're literally just like sent on this crazy, unachievable mission. And I think, like, yeah, exactly what you say. It just makes it so human and just highlights, yes, it's not glamorizing, but highlights like the utter insanity of that kind of period in time. And so, like, that's what really drew me in.
And do you think as well, just this, like you say, the impossible mission of it as well, but I think the camera work was the big hook when it first came out, that it's
Oh my,
this
yeah.
one shot, but it doesn't rely on a cliche. It's not just like this is all you care about.
Yes.
The story really does match, and it was done for a reason. It was done for an artistic choice, that you're stuck in with this character and only
Mm.
receive the information he does as well. So it makes for an incredibly intense and immersive experience.
Yeah. Oh my days. Like I watched it by myself
Oh wow.
and I remember just being like stopping at a certain points, like, oh God, like,
Yeah.
oh what, like, where you're just in such anguish. And I think, like you say with the camera thing, it's not playing up to that cliche, but coming back to like that whole humanistic view, you just feel like you're one of the other guys there with it. And like as he's like
Yes.
about, you feel like you're there. And so like it just makes it so raw, and so like when things do happen, it's the stakes are so much higher, so you just like you can't look away even from like all the horrific, like, yeah, it's like that human drive to experience even if it's horrific. And so like, yeah, it's an
I think the acting in it as well is absolutely first class across the board, even when it's just small cameos and stuff like that as well, because you're relentlessly traveling behind him. I know it's Richard, and I've completely forgot his surname, and I should have
oh, I'm
should have
terrible.
the guy who was in Game of Thrones, one of the brothers who gets murdered in the Red Wedding. His small scene in that when he receives the message. I don't want to spoil it too much, and just everything in his face just shows just that pure futility of it, and it's not a laugh riot.
No, I
It's
don't think
definitely
any of
not a
mine are
comedy.
like gigglers, are they? Like they're all quite intense.
But did you have a favorite scene in it at all, or was it just so immersive?
Maybe this is probably why I can't watch that many films, because I feel like I get so like in it, and maybe this
Yeah,
is like a choice, but like the bit where they he leaves the oh my gosh, words, he leaves the other army kind of battalion that he
yeah,
is with, and then he enters into that kind of abandoned town, and obviously comes across the sniper where he kind of has that out with him, and then like and then wakes up obviously and it's dark, and him, oh my gosh, running through, like when it's dark, running through that abandoned like town, and
yes,
the stakes were just so high, and you just could feel like my heart was in my mouth, like and where you're like, I think what I took away after, because I think I paused not long after that, where I was like,
yeah,
I need to leave this until tomorrow. um it's like I just can't physically imagine myself being there, like
yeah.
And it is, it's just like people like us that were literally like trying to just stay alive. So like even the bit where he like has like a grapple, like I don't know, obviously we've done like kind of stage combat and like film
Mm.
and those type of scenes. And so like even how they did like the combat and that, like the grapple where they're just like strangling each other. And it's not
Yeah,
like a big like, you know, like Avenger stand. It's like really
yeah,
like
yeah,
gory and like who handles a sword like that? And so like this was just so like it's how one of us, if we were literally put to war, you just do anything to live. And like so that just really got me and it kind of stuck with me. And it comes back to that whole humanist, like, wow, he's just like this little kid from like a town trying to not die and like running. Oh gosh, yeah, that got me. That I don't know whether it was my favorite, but it was the most like iconic bit for me.
yeah. No, I agree, and it's really similar. Like we've mentioned it, like All Quiet on the Western Front, the remake, and even the original as well. Just there is this. I think I mean we're both involved in a lot of action stuff, and I love action films, but I'm
Mm,
aware when you watch not a typical action film, it's very stylized. The even if you are a master martial artist or gunfighter or whatever, the way people are attacked and react, there's always a level of like we're setting it to camera where that
yeah,
just felt like you say, just someone trying to survive, throwing someone
literally.
in a lake and they can't swim. They're not going to show perfect swimming technique, but they're going to do anything to keep their head above water. And that's what I really
Literally.
felt like the combat in that felt was like. Just get desperate, grasping for anything,
Yeah.
just trying to do anything to keep living.
Yeah, I think that was a really smart choice. And the same thing, yeah, coming back to like Great Off Quiet on the Western Front, like that was really like added another level. And I think even like all the details, everything was so like thought through and like just real, not
Mm.
like yeah, showy Hollywood style. Like yeah, loved it.
I think it, like I say, I think in that sort of style of action, and even those sort of war films like a Rambo or something like that, it has its place. And if
100%. Yeah.
you're, yeah, but it's like if they suddenly, for instance, in 1917, launched in this amazing sort of John Wick
Martial
style
art.
gun loading and stuff, you'd be like, what?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it owes it to that film to have
100%.
that sort of violence and show the weight of the violence. And
Yeah.
that's one thing. I mean, do you agree with this as well? In a lot of action films, even Avengers, people are getting like punched about and stuff. And all right, you're not physically seeing them dying, but they're not going to wake up feeling tremendous and want to go for like a Ben and Jerry's or something like that. You know, I think those sort of films are needed, like 1917, to show the weight of violence and the weight of responsibility that war and you know
Yeah.
and army tactics can cause.
100%. And I think maybe that's what I liked because I think like violence is just so romanticized and like
Mm,
people again are gonna hate me for saying this, but like you know, like all the battle scenes and like all these big films that they put thousands like millions into, honestly I just get bored. Like I'm just like another explosion after another explosion, like and I'm like what is that adding to the film apart from like obviously visual it's amazing like but for me I'm just like what's the difference from one battle scene where they're just like to another.
mm.
Whereas that, I feel like the violence was like needed, and it's like the whole thing. It's not the same, but it's kind of the same. Like with like you know in like kind of intimate scenes, and they like choose to do like a topless something. And I remember
Mm.
I can't even remember the name of the director, but she was literally like, unless it is like vital to the story, why do you need to see like
Yes.
topless? And I think like that was the same in that film where it's like you didn't actually need to see the violence, but it lended to the story and it added to the story as opposed to just being like, and now we fight, go, you know?
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And also, like I say, I've seen films recently where an entire planet is wiped out, and then in the next scene, people are busting out jokes and stuff, and I'm just like, you've wiped out billions probably of people, but it doesn't even that's got no relevance within 10 minutes of
Yeah,
seeing it. It was done as a special effect, and I think you owe the audience and also you owe the scripts and stuff more than that to actually give
yeah.
weight to these decisions that someone's willing to wipe out a planet to like further their cause. It's really important to show
Mhm.
what the damage that violence does really and the lasting effects of
Yeah.
it. So
Maybe that's more of a description of human
yeah.
normalcy of it other
And what we
than
do, what we do for entertainment,
what I
yeah.
live, so don't worry about it.
Right, all right then. So from 1917, where should we go next?
Ooh. shall we do? And I'm going to put my hands up for this.
Yeah.
Let's do Eternal Sunshine because I did watch it a long time ago, and so I did
Mm.
go through and had to kind of refresh my memory, and I was like, oh yeah, but I feel like it's so different, so it'd be a nice juxtaposition for
For, for,
1970.
yeah, it's lovely. And honestly, full accountability on that one. When I always name, like, because it's impossible to have the top three films ready, but my three films, this is always either three or four. This
Is
the time.
it?
Yeah, this is one of those ones that when I went to see it in the cinema, I felt concussed and I couldn't breathe at the end of watching it because it was just, it's a masterclass in direction, film technique. Again, nothing, it's very stylized, but it's all done for a
Mm.
reason because you're going through someone's memories and stuff. But anyway, yeah, please tell me about it. Why did you pick this one?
100%. Literally for all you just said. I just
Sorry.
that just that. No, no, no. I love it
Mm.
because you said it perfectly. And like, yeah, just so in like smart and like you say how the camera works used to kind of befuddle you a little bit and like I guess maybe it was me just being like a little bit of like a hopeless romantic. Like I love the idea that
Mm.
they like I cry so much in films. Like I feel like I'm like always on the surface to be able to be which I don't know what says about me, but I think like the bit at the end when they're just like
Oh.
coming back to each other, I just think it's so like beautiful and like I think I loved again it's like that realist
Mm.
kind of thing at the end where they're like they realize how shitty like when they discover that obviously they had known each other and they'd had quite a turbulent relationship and they were like ooh like should we do this again and I
Yeah.
think I loved the fact that they were like yeah let's try and I think like that's what's like drew me in because I think like we're all a bit like God, deep times. But I think we're all just a bit like Hollywoodized, if that's the word.
Mm.
Definitely not. But like in our relationships, like it's just like needs to all be perfect. And so I was like, it's just so nice that they were like, this isn't perfect. We know that we have problems, but the fact that we can identify them and they want to work through them, I just was like, yeah, I just thought that was really different and unique. And it wasn't the whole just like happy ending again. It was like, yeah, just real. And I just feel like you related to the characters so much. Like almost I guess because you imagine you were literally in their head the whole time. You knew
Mm.
exactly what they were thinking. You yeah, just related so much.
Did you? What did? We're going to go deep into spoiler territory quite quickly. We're literally going to the end. What did you take about from the image of the repeating frames at the end, like the very last thing you see, where they're just running off into the snow over and over again until it fades to white? Did you think that was a hopeful thing? Like you were going to keep trying to be in love, or?
That's what I took from it, that they were like
Mm.
running away from kind of like societal pressures. That they were like, don't follow us, we're like doing our own thing. And the fact that they'd like escaped being erased, that's what I took from it.
That's a
Or
lovely.
maybe going off to die, who knows? Like maybe that's them running off.
I really fell out of a friend of mine for quite a bit of time afterwards because they said to me, "Oh, well, it's just because we're always doomed to make the same mistakes over and over." And it's like that's all they're going to keep doing, get their
Oh,
memories wiped and just making the same mistakes and breaking up again and again. I was like, I can't deal with you for a while.
I'm gonna need you to take your negativity away
Yeah.
right now. Oh, I really was
And yeah, I know. I was like, oh, I can't.
savage.
But I think that's the beauty of art as well, right? Because it
Mm.
doesn't tell you how to feel. It gives you this film, it gives you these ideas, and I think that's the highest expression of all art. That it makes you ask questions, and what one person's view might not be another. But the most important thing is
Mm.
you're getting something from it. It's inspiring something from you, not just sitting there and going, oh, "That's nice."
Yeah, because I do think that as much as I think everything in me wants like a nice tied up end, like I want it to be like, you know, everything, yeah, all loose ends. But
Mm.
maybe it is quite open at the end. I hadn't really recognized that. I think that I just so thought I'm like, yeah, that's what happens. That is what everyone thinks until you have like you chat with someone else and you're like, oh, you realize yeah, that everyone's had a different experience. So I actually hadn't thought that there was any other option. Do you know what I mean?
Well, no, I
Yeah,
don't think there has
maybe.
to be. I know I didn't. I'm a romanticist as well and an eternal optimist, so I couldn't. I just like it did the title of the film, Eternal Sunshine. It's like always, and the fact that Jim Carrey's character wanted to fight and wanted to keep those memories, because even if the relationship breaks at the end and they're not together anymore, there was real value in the time they did have. So
Yeah.
I that's me. So you're not going to persuade me. I will listen to your argument, but then I will disagree so strongly.
You're wrong.
I'll stop speaking to you for a few.
Oh,
But
I kind of actually, I don't know. I feel like I'm actually not an optimist. I'm very much like pessimistic. So I feel like maybe even if I wasn't 100% sure that they were going to stay together, I was like, at least they've had a nice time together and they'll remember
yes.
the memories. So even that, I'm like, that's fine, you know?
And you know what you just said about them running away together at the end, and you just saying that, that's brought me another ending, that relationship, that they'll always be able to escape erasure because it has happened. It has existed, even if they neither remember anymore. That love and that bond has gone off into the universe, which is super trippy, but so,
No, but I kind of love that, and it kind of brings me back. I mean, getting real deep, but like I do feel like your body stores memories, not just in your brain. Like
yes.
you know, if you like feel a certain sensation, like I think it is literally, and maybe this is like all the biologists are going to be like, what is happening? But I do think like you like store stress like in your muscles
Cortisol,
and
yeah,
your
yeah, yeah,
cells.
yeah.
So why would you not store like the effects of memories in your body? And so
That's a
like I think
beautiful
that
feeling.
almost is like the same thing where it's like even if they don't remember absolutely everything, you like always remember this is like how you make someone feel like, and
Yes,
that's always like what I think and like dry, but like coming back to like auditions and things like that, it's like it's just how you make someone feel. It's not necessarily like what is put out there. It's just their perception of it.
completely. And you see when like a smell hits somebody that they've not smelled in a while, they'll see someone they've not seen someone in a while. And if it's a joyous thing, instantly the shoulders come back, their chest lifts, their face all lifts, their eyes open wider to experience it. So yeah, I think there is definitely a chemical release that just gets stored into the body, and that memory never leaves you, because you might not be in that memory anymore, but just a single smell brings back nostalgia, which instantly takes you back 100% into it as well, which
Yeah,
is yeah,
like
it's a
pinpointing those memories.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a beautiful way of looking at it. And we have to talk about Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet as well, because at that point, Jim Carrey was essentially just the mask or Dumb and Dumber, and Kate
Yeah.
Winslet was not giving up her side of the door on Titanic. So, so,
Brilliant.
but then, so what a flip. But so, like to her to play that sort of kooky character with brightly coloured hair, and him to be this really sort of dour, really drawn back and restrained character all of a sudden, like just super depressed, basically. How did that hit you as well, the way they were playing those characters?
I think that that's what I love because they basically switch. Like
Yes.
obviously plays normally more like, and maybe not so much now, but like yeah, like Titanic was obviously quite heavy. I feel like if I'd seen her in something else before that, it was like it's all quite like serious
She was
and
period drama and very just
yeah,
like that
straight
was it.
narrow,
Yeah.
yeah, and like amazing, but just in a different way. And the same thing, like I was what did I used to watch of him? Oh, I used to like very much his comedy stuff, like back in the day, like
It was like Living Color, Dumb and Dumber, The Mask. They
yeah,
were like all of his like things.
all those big
Ace
things, and so like
Ventura, yeah.
yes, and like all those like really physical comedy, like, and so the yeah, I think I just loved seeing him in such a different aspect, and it made me almost appreciate his performance more because I was
Mm.
like, wow, like the breadth of yeah that talent is crazy, and I think he almost got a little bit pigeonholed in the sense of like he's very much oh he's just a comedic actor and he's just silly and ridiculous, but actually I think that showed like, and even more in contrast to her, it just showed how like yeah how what's the word I'm looking for, yeah,
Um,
how varied, like varied he
yes.
could be. I think that's what I appreciated, and from knowing his films and loving his films, maybe when I was a kid, it like was a good gateway for me because I was like, oh, I really like him. Okay, let's go. And
It's
then also
amazing. Sorry,
you,
go on. No, it's amazing to me with comedians, how like zany and stuff they can be. But Robin Williams is another great example as well.
Mm.
How they can do the serious stuff so well as well. It just seems like they have that ability. I don't know if a lot of comedians might be in great pain all the time as well, so they're
I
able
think
to
that's a
express
lot of
it.
it.
Yeah.
100%. I think it's the whole like dark humor type thing. Like a lot of humor comes from like pain or misery. It's like that fine
Mm,
line between like pleasure and pain. And so like I think that's
yeah.
why comedians probably do it so well, because they can like just slightly cross over into that line. And like I don't know. I think as well it worked so well because he's such a physical actor. In this, it
Yes.
was quite physical. Like when he was like pretending to be a baby and like they're crawling around their sheets and they're all like entangled. Like
Yeah.
that lent itself very well to like the physicality of it. I think really was worked well with that.
He was like I say, I mean, I've watched a lot of Jim Carrey recently. He also did a two by the same director. It was all created by the same director, called Kidding. It was like a two series show on Showtime. That's, like I say, by the guy that directed Eternal Sunshine of Spotless Mind. So very similar sort of setup and crazy surreal moments, and at the same time it's all about a child performer in, or like entertainer in the style of Mr. Rogers, but in his real life he'll never say a bad word, and he will never think bad of people. But then he has a massive tragedy in his life, and he's always smiling, always keeping it together, but you can just see the seams are starting to go on him. And it's in pretty intense. Again, Jim Carrey being super restrained, but at the same time just like, whoa.
I think that's actually so apt because obviously, like, I don't know if you've thought, I don't know that much about kind of Jim Carrey and his experience, but didn't his wife pass away quite recent, or not that recently, but within the last couple of years?
It was he had some weird stuff going on. Yeah, his wife, I believe, was died of a drug overdose, and he was there's a lot of like, yeah, but it's something really, and they were very close to each other, and it was just when it happened. And yeah, there seems to be something in his life that he's had a complete recalibration to
Yeah,
fame
that's
and
awesome.
who he is. And his interviews are so interesting now. Like
Yeah.
he almost steps outside of himself and like really examines about what his place in the universe
Mm.
is.
I remember watching. I don't watch that much like news, but I remember watching an interview with him. I think it was like quite recent after, and it was basically saying like he was like, "Oh, I love your suit," and he's like, "I'm not wearing the suit because I like we don't exist. We're like it could just be like a figment of imagination." And like he basically, yeah, that whole thing of stepping outside yourself and like what is real, and like he's just a soul or a spirit. Like it's not necessarily anything
Yeah.
that's real. Like it's all just in our minds. And I just find that concept really, really interesting.
Did you see the one? I believe it was Jimmy Fallon. Did you see the one when he just come back? I think he had just done Sonic, and he comes out. Jimmy Fallon introduces him, normal chat show thing, and he stands there and he doesn't go to the seat. He just stands looking at the crowd, and then they're all clapping, and then he just carries on standing there. The band stops. Jimmy Fallon tries to get a laugh out of it, like, "Come with me, Jim. Come with me, Jim," and he just doesn't move. He just stands there and keeps looking, and then eventually, and with the crowd still clapping, he sits down, and Jimmy Fallon goes, "What happened there?" He goes, "I just wanted to see what happened if I just carried on standing there." And it was so like, whoa, like his will to just be like, what does this all mean, and actually
Yeah.
question it. I'm like, what's sort of gone on with him there? Like he's an very interesting dude.
Yeah, I think it's like really interesting to watch from a distance, but I think would be quite scary to experience. Like you must feel so untethered. And I think
Yes.
that's what I get whenever I watch him. I almost feel a bit uneasy because he has like he doesn't give a fuck. Not in a
No.
horrible way, but like he knows that there's no real consequence, really.
Yes.
Which is
I imagine that's what makes him such a great actor as well, that he just
yeah,
doesn't care. He can just put himself into any situation because he goes,
yeah.
well, it all doesn't exist anyway.
And this is why I was actually interested. So I would like to watch his new stuff because I think I after seeing those interviews, I was like, whoa, like I didn't even know what to think, and so I didn't know if he was still performing. And so yeah, I was literally thinking it would be very interesting to see what his kind of outlook is now, if he still wanted to be part of that industry, because surely that's just adding another level of unrealism if he's already thinking that he's not real.
From what I understand, obviously I don't know Jim personally, but he made. I think he made the second Sonic, and he said unless it is a project that really interests him now, he's retired. Which sort of seems to me, again, not knowing Jim, that he did Sonic 1. For him, he very rarely has ever done a sequel in his life. For him to come back to Sonic 2, it was probably like a ka-ching moment. So he's probably like,
Yeah,
well, that's me for life now, and probably any kids for life as well. So see ya, and just walk, because he
fair,
could have been in a Marvel or anything if he really wanted to. Like, he was back up there in bankability. Maybe he just thought, well, no, I'm sort of done now.
fair play. I think, yeah.
And I do think anyone who hasn't seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, it's a real good sort of starting point. Like if you watch something like The Mask or Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura, and then switch to Eternal Sunshine, you realize, like, actors suddenly you get the idea that if you watch his more comedy stuff, Jim Carrey's just running around the whole time in his daily life and all stuff. But then you can see, well, no, actually, there may be this thing. He's a great actor. There may be a point when that all switches off, and he's actually more like this guy, or it may be a collection of both, which is probably closer to the truth. But it's really jarring. It's almost like experiencing a different person wearing the same
Yeah,
skin.
yeah, super weird. I think like this is why I actually don't ever really want to meet anyone who I like really idolize, because I a lot of the time you just idolize their characters that they've played or the visual that they've like put out to the press or whoever. And I just think what I've tried to do recently, and this is like people within the industry for me as well, is like people are just humans. Like people literally
Yes.
wake up in the morning and they're like they're tired, or and I think like I really put people up on a pedestal sometimes, and so like it's quite nice actually to for him to be so real and so unpolished that
Yes.
I appreciate that. And yeah, like he's wild.
And do you feel as well, like when someone is sort of getting in that mindset, that you actually realize incredibly, so you get so convinced, or you equate someone, an actor, so much with a certain role, you're like, that must be them, and then you see them away from it and you're just like, oh wow, you're just an incredible actor, you've just put that character together, but you actually have nothing in common with them whatsoever.
I think actually saying that though, from like being like an acting perspective, I think sometimes those are easier because you
Mm,
then project like not that it's almost cartoonesque, but like I think you can then go to the extreme and you find more joy in like playing characters that are so unlike you. Whereas if you're playing yourself, I think yeah, it's hard to almost detach from it, and then it's hard to actually just be within the story instead of just being like, oh, it's just me.
yeah,
So I get what you're saying, but I think there's a flip side to that. But also
interesting.
saying that, I think that's why like so many co-stars like fall in love, because if they're playing a role where they're meant to be in love with each other, I think if your brain just tricks you into like if you act something out long enough, it's like habits. Like the more you do it, you're literally just pretend your brain's like, oh yeah, this is what we do. You're like, what is the difference between fact and feelings and thoughts when they're just all merged together?
Wow. So what I was going to say quickly before we just go on to the last film, do you think this is why there's certain actors, it's not done so much now because of social media, but actors like Tom Cruise or Denzel Washington especially, they don't really reveal too much about their personal lives. They're very hidden. And I don't necessarily think, I mean, there might be just thing they just don't want to share their social lives, but also I think the more you reveal of the true character, the harder it is people to perceive you as someone else. Because if they know exactly what you're like in real life, then when you're suddenly like, I don't know, I'm a serial killer, people are like, but he's lovely, like it's that interesting thing. As an actor, do you ever feel like there's that boundary that you don't want to reveal too much about your social life versus this need now almost that to become a brand, you have to reveal so much about yourself?
But I think even with the whole brand identity, like it's all curated. It's not, them
Mm,
just necessarily opening up about everything. I think there's a bit of a, it's, yeah, there's a line. Like I think
yes.
for me, there's certain like nowadays everyone wants like behind the scenes. They want like up close and personal. Everyone wants to, yeah, be up in your grill and know everything about you. And I think you would benefit, like it's helpful, and you can, as you say, create that brand and build like a kind of rapport with people. But I think there's certain things about our personal lives that shouldn't be shared. Like,
Mm,
I don't know, I can't even think now off the top of my head, but like certain like things in a relationship, there's like no one needs to see certain things, like, do you know what I mean? Like, and it's
yeah,
not because it's not palatable or it's not,
that's just your. That should just be you. Yeah,
it should
to
just
you.
be,
Yeah,
yeah, what you share between like you and your partner. But I don't know. I think I'm really torn because part of me wants to go full Sia and be completely, yeah, as you say, like locked down, because the less people know, the less they can like put their
yes,
perspective on you. Whereas, but also, if you're a brand and that's how you make your money, then you need to obviously kind of open up about those things. So I guess, yeah, I guess I'm kind of torn. Like, I don't know what the answer is because current actors, I think, have it super difficult. Like, I think everything in me is like, oh, I just want to, be in lots of nice films and do that thing. But actually, whenever you're that level of success, how much time are you actually going to be doing like press releases and like talking to random
mm,
people and selling yourself? And I think so that's where I think there's the line between like what you share and what doesn't need to be shared.
that's such an interesting way of looking at it because yeah, you do have to give so much of yourself because there is
Yeah.
when you're starring and you're like the lead in a film or whatever, they are buying into the celebrity so much as well. Maybe not so much with some of the tentpole things like Marvel films. Now you're just going to see the characters, but for the longest time, it was the person's name above the title of the film that made you want to go and see it.
And it's almost like a credibility of a film. Like if you're like, wow, well, Tom Hanks isn't just gonna
Yeah, he's never
be
going
in
to phone it in,
anything.
is he? Yeah, yeah.
It's almost like that like level of respect maybe that you give these people, which is really bad. And again, I think doesn't necessarily open up the industry to maybe say like newcomers in that sense. But I think it's getting better in the sense of like with Netflix and things like that, there's easier ways for newcomers to be viewed in like films that are only on those type of sites that
Yes,
aren't necessarily just going to be using like Halle Berry or all these big names to sell themselves. So
makes
I think
sense.
there's pros and cons, but
No, it's a really, really interesting perspective on it as well. I think, yeah, the nature of celebrity and the nature of performance it is very much up to the individual, as long as they feel comfortable with it and it's consensual. I think really, and it again, it creates debate or a response in a good way. It doesn't harm
yeah,
anyone.
no
There's a good
press
reject.
is bad press. But I think that the like the what's the word? The old like the granny in me wants to just like have the old days where it's just see like the glossy pictures and that's all you see of a celebrity. And I think that is super, that's more exciting to me than seeing someone on like at home. Why would you,
Yeah.
I guess it makes them more relatable, but I think it's that whole movie star style of like the 50s 60s I think was so much more interesting, but that's just me.
No, I agree with it. The glamorization and stuff as well. So we've got a bit of time left. So let's talk about one of the biggest films this side of a Bollywood film. It's for almost 3 hours long, people. But I honestly
It's
got to
so long.
say, I back when I used to read reviews and care about them rather than just thinking it sounds like my sort of film, I should go and see it. I passed on the opportunity of seeing the Cloud Atlas in the cinemas, and after watching it most of yesterday and today. I really wish I had seen it in the cinema because it's one of those ones, in my opinion, the spectacle really lives up to the script as well. It was absolutely phenomenal,
It's
really. And
epic.
even though I thought this could have been a miniseries, this would have been banging on like Amazon Prime, I actually think it lends itself quite well to being a 3 hour film because it cuts so quickly. It really, you cannot look away for a second. You really
Yeah.
have to be on your point. And I think it really works well as a film. So please, Rachel, why Cloud Atlas? Why not Cloud Atlas?
Well, exactly. One of the things, as I said, is because it like fits and ticks all the crazy boxes of like dystopian future, but also like period, but also comedy, but also it's everything. And I think like it's just so interesting. And I think it's so unique. Like I can't think of
Mm,
another film that is like it. It covers all kind of like periods and time and etc. And like even the fact that is there a bit in it that there's like tribes and things. I just think
yes.
it's so relatable and so every aspect of it can be put onto real life or can be, to argue a case that is current. Like, even if it's like indigenous people, how they're treated within the world, like you can use that scene of this, or like how, in the, I think it's New Seoul, is that the one?
Yeah, 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 yeah. New
Yeah.
Soul, yeah.
And even how that's viewed and how, Asian workers or like, you know, clothing workers or anything where I was reading about like modern day slavery recently. Not to, again, a laugh a minute topic, but it's just
It's exactly the
so
same.
it just covers every point, and I think it's so interesting. Like you could literally just dissect this film for like 5 hours, and I get why people maybe hate it as well. Like I think there's a bit, when they because they use a lot of prosthetics and
Yes.
it's very, I think, I get that they want to transform them, but I think that they've transformed what isn't appropriate is like transformation of race. And so like there's definitely bits where I'm like, oh, like it's not, yeah, it's a bit
That
strange.
they make a Caucasian actor Asian, but then they
Yeah,
also make Halle Berry white. And I think they're just, I think as an actor being in that must have been absolutely amazing because there's so, I
yeah.
mean, a nightmare at the same time that you're playing like
Like
20 different characters in one film. But just like Hugh Grant, as you say, shows up as a cannibal, a futuristic cannibal at one point. I'm like, what am I actually watching now? This has all gone
yeah,
mad.
like if you describe it, people like it's wacky and like I don't even know if they were on something when they wrote that because I don't even know where you can even pull it from. It's just so yeah, vast, like the story and the way that it interweaves, and like you said, like it's so quick the changes, and so
Mm.
like for me, as I struggle with concentration for that long period of time, it really kept me engaged because it was if you didn't like one story, okay, quick, it's going to change to another. And so it runs the risk of not being able to engage with the characters because of that. But I don't think
No, I
necessarily
don't.
that was the case. I think you still kind of had the heart of it as well.
I think the thing that really blew me away about it was the way they reused lines of dialogue through different characters. Certain characters ended up watching films about the other characters. They were reading books about the stories of the other characters, music they were listening to. So I need to watch it again really soon. It's really stuck with me, but it's
Mm.
just it talks about the nature of art. And one thing that really stuck with me as well, the director directed a film before called Run Lola Run, which is one of my favorites because it's a really low budget experimental film, but it mixed animation, really like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, actually
Mm.
mixed animation, live action, different types of camera work, and it was incredible. And you've got that director there and the Wachowskis, for better or for worse, have absolutely crazy big vision and made some money with the Matrix and then were given budgets for a very long time. Unfortunately, their films, because they are very far reaching and have, ask a lot of the audience to think
Mm.
about it. It's not going to be, maybe have the stylization and the CGIs of a Marvel film, but they're going to ask much bigger questions. And because of that, they don't really get those big film chances anymore. But my God, like, they were willing to take a swing and a miss on things, and they're willing to reach, and they're willing not just to stick to a formula. They want to do these big question films. And I mean, even what we just talked about there, that we had the same actor switch race, gender, age, language all in one film. And even the question that, like, when we talk about cultural appropriation, or
Mm.
can it, and especially what's coming in these days, should an actor who is not of that sexual persuasion or race or whatever play a character? When does that boundary of jumping and being an actor step on someone else's I don't know, culture? And
Identity.
should you? It's just, again, we're asking questions. There's no right or wrong, but just having art out there that is allowing you to think about these things and ask those questions, I think is absolutely vital.
I think it kind of comes back to the question of like, I mean, it's not everyone would have that experience, but how can say like a Caucasian actor fully understand the experience of like an Asian actor. Like if
Yes.
they're playing, and that is vital to the story. And it might be that they haven't had the experience, but maybe in their family they have. So I don't know what the answer is in terms of
No.
like what is appropriate and what's not. I think the whole switch of like gender, age, all those things, but I think when it came to race, I don't know. I it
Mm.
felt just a little bit kind of on the cusp for me. That was, I mean, I didn't actually realize there was one bit because Berry, excuse me, is I think she becomes like an old maybe Chinese or Japanese man. At some point, I
Oh
didn't even realize it was her, and so
no.
like I think in that sense, does it actually really matter? But then, yeah, it's just on the
There
line.
was like a bit. I think the bit when she become the middle-aged Jewish woman, and I was just like, I had to stop the film and go and look at that because I was like, right, okay, because they're reusing actors. Like, is who is that? Because I didn't even clock it was Halle Berry. Like the prosthetics was so good. It's an interesting one, and like I say, it's just I think as long as you've got because of what the Wachowskis has gone through with their gender and their gender identity, and it's changed so much. It's sort of like I just think they're not they're not looking for the controversy of it. They're more just looking about even the idea of the Matrix about you can become someone else, you can jump into another
Mm.
body, or feeling trapped in a certain body or in a certain like employment or lifestyle. I just think it's so interesting and the overall and really, before, if you haven't watched the Cloud Atlas, and you probably haven't, but you really bloody you owe yourself 3 hours to, even if you don't connect with it at all, it's really worth a watch just because it's
Yeah.
mind blowing. But just for me, what did you think the overarching message was for you?
God.
Go 3 hour film,
I know.
bang.
Bang. Honestly, let me collect my thoughts because I just feel like, there's so much that goes on.
Yeah,
I think that like art transcends age, gender,
yeah,
any kind of denomination. That's what I took it from it. The whole like sextet that goes through. I think that was really interesting and I guess lends itself to the whole, yeah, does art imitate life, does life imitate art, blah blah,
mm,
all that thing. Like, do communities keep coming back, like the fact that like God exists or whatever we imagine God to be in all these isolated communities, like we still have this overarching theme of one higher power. Is it that we all have like ingrained in us and humans this like natural progressing, and that's always where our brain is going to lead to, that we're always going to think that there's something more out there or something. And so I think that's what I like, the
that's the
collective
beautiful one.
human experience where everyone kind of comes back to the same feeling. It's all like, it's all about love, it's all about like,
Yeah,
you know yeah, the human experience, no matter, throughout time, throughout communities, throughout yeah, you're
it, it was very weird because towards the end, I have had the book on my shelf for years to read. I've got to read it, and yeah, there's certain things that I lean towards in spirituality, and like human connection and energy. And by the end of it, I was like, this is really freaky because like it almost felt like something was talking directly to me, or like everything I had sort of believed up until now, knowledge wise, was really in the last 10 minutes of that film. And I was like, yeah, I'm probably going to go and cry for a minute now.
literally, but we
Yeah.
turned it off, and I remember just sitting there, you're like, I just don't even know what to say because
Yeah.
there's so much that goes on, and I think you end up being a bit dumbfounded at the end, even if you loved or hated it. It just, yeah, it gets to you, and I think it, even if you don't necessarily love it, I think everyone can relate to it on some level. It's
Yes.
something for everyone, even if that's not your jam. There'll be one aspect that kind of sits or hits home with you that you'll take away and maybe think for the next couple of days, like, oh, that's quite interesting. Like, but
Well,
yeah, it's it's interesting.
I can already tell you now, like something like The Fountain, which I've watched far too many times in my life, it's going to be one of those films that I've already ordered a copy of it on DVD, because I'm gonna go read the book, not because I need to. I don't understand when people go, oh, I don't understand it, I need to work it out, I'm going to go and watch a video about it on YouTube. No, because whatever you think the answer is, that is the answer for you in that day. You can go back and
Yeah.
watch a film again and it will mean something completely different to you. That's the nature of art. Just enjoy it. Whatever your brain's coming at you with, that's the answer. Stick with that. Don't let someone else tell you what to believe.
But literally, because then I think you come away, and the whole thing is that you're meant to come away, and especially with a film like that, like you're meant to come away and think about it. You're not meant to just come away
Yes.
and be like, oh, I'm so glad that the lovers got together. Done. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's not like even if it is kind of tied up nicely at the end, there's still so much more you can kind of unpack, being like, whoa, is this like this bit, especially the bit in the I can't remember what they're called, the in New Seoul, and there's like
Yeah.
the workers, like that's really, I mean, I'm not to that level at all, but like really that's such an imitation of kind of like the meat industry, or like where
Yes.
there's a lot of things that hit kind of too close to home that can kind of you take away and you think about it. And I'm sure when, exactly like you say, you'll watch it another time and something else, whatever mood you're in, will kind of make you question something. And if that makes you go off and do other research, or, you know, great. But yeah, like you say, there's no point going and then seeing what someone else thinks, because then surely that's just a
Their
waste of
opinion.
watching. You just should read the review and don't watch the film.
And that's the other thing. I think it's only something I've come up in recent years as well. It's like, stop reading reviews. If you want to go and see, like some reviewers now, like Mark Commode or whatever, I'll watch him purely for entertainment, but I won't let it persuade me whether I'm going to watch a film or not. I think it's so important to make up your own mind and not feel like, even if you watch something and complete any sort of form of art, listen to it, watch it, and you don't agree with it, it doesn't sit well with you, it's not a waste of time, because at least you've experienced something that you disliked, but you gave it a go, you followed a curiosity, as opposed to like, yeah, let someone else in curating your world for you.
I think it also then shows you a lot about maybe where gaps are missing in maybe your knowledge or your beliefs. It's if you're like, oh, that sits okay with me. Someone's like, whoa, that's not okay. Then maybe it makes you question, like, oh, where are my morals? Is this something I should
Yeah,
do a bit more? And so, like, even if I think this is the same with a lot of films, like it just makes you question things about yourself. Like, and I'm always here for like a little rom-com, or, you know, if you just want to kind of really, really chill out. But I think a lot of the time it's to kind of provoke something and provoke a thought. And like with their previous films, like Matrix and things like that, it really is thought provoking and forces you to view society in a different way.
exactly. Well, listen, Rachel, we've had a great time. We got it done. We even
Woo!
braved the wilds of Zoom, which terrifies me.
I know.
So thank you.
I dragged you, screw kicking and
Screaming
screaming.
in. No, I want my Skype. But actually, Zoom, you've worked quite well today. So one
Yay!
back in the Zoom column for me. Well,
Nice.
listen,
Take that one.
thank you so much. And like, we just covered 3 films today, but I'd love to get you back on at some point and we could discuss something else on the list as well. They all look like quite interesting
Absolutely.
choices. So, but before we
Amazing.
go, where can people follow you if you want them to follow you? And I will put it all in the show notes as well for you.
I am mainly on Instagram at
Yeah,
Rachel Bosworth, RachelBolsworth. That's me.
brilliant.
Um, and everything you need to find anything else about me is on there. Hit me up. And yeah, it would be lovely to connect with more people. Maybe
Amazing.
I'm a filmy. Has this created a film critic in me? Who's to say?
Oh, maybe we'll both be on Cloud Atlas 2 playing multiple characters. Who knows?
Yes, that'd be lovely. See you there.
All the best. Anyway, well, thank you so much. Have a lovely
Thanks so
day.
much for having me.
No worries.
See
Speak
you
to you soon.
soon.
Bye now.
Bye.